Welcome to episode number 136 of No Room for Phonies.
This episode is Books Worth Reading, The Mother Dance, How Children Can Change Your Life.
Can change your life. How children change your life.
Absolutely.
It's not about can they,
they
will.
Happy Mother's Day.
Yes, by Harriet Lerner. She's a PhD. She has done The Dance of Anger. She has written actually quite a few books. The Dance of Fear. She's written a lot of books.
That you've read.
Yes, that I have read.
Is she the one that did the Apologies book?
No. Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
I did read that one.
Yeah. So we're just doing this because Mother's Day and
It's May.
May is about mothering.
It's spring.
And this is actually a really, really good book. And she starts out by saying motherhood is hard and new mothers crave hearing the voices of other mothers talking to them and telling them they are not crazy or alone.
And just to think of the generations where women did not have any.
No. And
anybody.
had way more children.
Yeah.
And maybe they didn't work outside the home, but their jobs inside the home were huge,
Mm-hmm.
without running water, without,
And depending on the country that they're in, there were the village phenomena of the women all being together and supporting each other, but not in rural Canada.
No. And Gloria Steinem says, perhaps we share stories in much the same spirit that explorers share maps, hoping to speed each other's journey and knowing the journey we make will be our own.
Yeah, so one of her points is that having children is a lifelong lesson in vulnerability and feeling out of control. And this goes for dads too.
Yeah, a lot of the things she said do apply. And we basically surrender to forces that are greater than ourselves. And the pain and grief that mothers feel stems from the belief that we should have control over our children when it's really hard enough just to have control over ourselves.
But
she does talk a lot about how pregnancy and the actual act of childbirth are a massive change and transformation in a relatively short amount of time. And that we basically, as women, we get through it the best we can.
And then you just have to pick up.
Yeah, and labor is a well-named, all-consuming experience. And, then she goes on to say, even though we're not in control of our children, we still feel guilty and responsible. And most of what we worry about doesn't happen. And then the things that we don't anticipate do happen. So she sees it as a leap of faith after carefully considering whether you want to have children, which a lot of people do now, that really in the past, I don't necessarily think that people sat around considering whether they wanted to
for a while
children.
They didn't even have, for a long time they had no option.
Yeah. But even after you've considered everything carefully, there are a lot of unknown variables to having kids.
Absolutely. I never had heard of the next term. It's called matrophobia.
Yeah, the fear of becoming one's mother. So we are all shaped by the past, but we are not doomed by it. And really, motherhood or parenthood in some ways, confronts us with the unresolved pain and emotionally loaded issues of our past. And I love it how she says a dysfunctional family is any family with more than one person in it.
So if you're a hermit, you won't be.
You don't have.
We are not rational on the subject of mothers and motherhood.
And she just says to avoid getting swept up in the chronic anxiety, fighting, and mother blaming.
And it's important for mothers to help fathers by ensuring that they have lots of time alone with their children without supervision, criticism, expertise, or good advice. And it's true because both as parents, they're both as inexperienced.
Yeah.
The difference is you carried the child in your body, so there's a different attachment. But I think there also sometimes comes this entitlement to, or this thing that they I think mothers do it better than fathers. And society does a lot of dumbing down of men and of fathers.
Yes,
the last
but there's a self-fulfilling thing that happens, right? The mother, starts by carrying most of the load.
Yeah.
And then that continues. So,
And,
there's
I
all
mean,
the
but-
mental load.
Yeah.
And then, but yet then there's the whole piece of when the father does something and it's not quite what the mother wanted or expected,
And there's a criticism.
then
and the father's
then
like,
they
okay.
back off.
And it takes one criticism.
Yeah, it does. So she also talks about how you can be honest about the good, the bad, and the unspeakable of mothering. Mothers have a variety of responses to the crisis that a new baby presents.
Right.
And
I mean, there's a whole
Yeah.
variety. I mean, there's
Yeah.
joy, but I mean, just the baby
and
blues.
because she says,
What's the correct term for baby blues?
postpartum.
Postpartum depression.
Yeah. I mean, baby blues and postpartum depression can be two different things.
Oh.
Like it doesn't have to be. You can just kind of have the baby blues without.
The
Going.
full-blown clinical
Yes,
depression?
yes.
Oh, okay.
So, and she talks about the fact that women's stories, if told truthfully, are as diverse as the women themselves, and so are the children they raise.
Yeah. I think because our human brain likes to make patterns and likes to think things need to be as similar as our
Mhm.
brain thinks, that we lump things together so quickly.
And she also talks about the fact that there are some stages and seasons in our children's lives that at best we just kind of muddle
We
through.
just have to muddle through.
And there are countless mothers and categories of mothers who have not yet spoken or whose voices have not been believed, recorded, or counted.
Yeah, that's a very powerful sentence.
Yeah, I think so too. The bond between mother and child is usually powerful and intense. The management or experience or defensiveness of this emotional intensity just varies with each woman, and there's no normal or right way to feel. And she just talks about the fact that actually going through labor kind of puts you in an altered state for a while, like both
Yeah,
physically
both
and
physically
and depending on how difficult your labor is.
yeah, it's traumatic.
Yes, like
And
and
then the body responds.
then just think about the fact that maybe you were expecting a natural birth and you end up with a C-section,
Mhm.
and then that's a whole thing. And she does talk about the fact that judgments are always directed your way no matter what you do. Guilt is the heart of motherhood. The more motherhood is surrounded by flowery praise, the less it is valued.
Wow, that's interesting. So to try and contravene shaming and guilting with flowery praise is not.
No, it
do
doesn't.
anything.
No. So when we become mothers, we have this new opportunity to revisit the past and find creative ways to elicit more authentic stories from our own mothers about what it was really like for them. Interesting, because we were just watching The View today, and Jimmy Fallon has written this book, Papa Didn't Do Anything, right? And he kind of talks about how men of that certain generation
Yep.
really didn't talk about it. And I think that's like true of mothers of my mother's generation,
Yes,
who
they-
would have been like in her 80s now.
And they wouldn't have talked
No,
about
no.
so many things. All that experience and wisdom and turmoil gone internalized and
Yeah.
unspoken.
And knowing our mothers as real people does help us to know ourselves better. It also makes it less likely that we will mindlessly rebel against or follow family patterns. Like if we really understand where someone's coming from,
Right.
we won't necessarily,
Yeah. Well, I had a complicated relationship with my mother, and we definitely had to work out how not to have a
Yeah.
similar family pattern. So we need to resolve societal issues to move forward. So when first she mentions that parenting and homemaking are naturally more involving and time consuming for mothers.
so in that,
I think
she's saying
that's a societal issue
Yes.
that can be changed.
yes, absolutely.
And
And
the whole mental load thing, men have mental load, they just concentrated at work. And the burden of providing
but these
and
this
but
list
it's
are
just-
things that the society has,
could change, or that she believes we could
Yes.
change.
like men's careers can't be tampered with.
Well, we played around with that.
Yeah, we did. So, and it's the woman's job to figure out childcare. That's definitely
where
A
the whole
societal
thing, oh,
myths.
my husband is babysitting tonight. I
Yeah.
hate that sentence.
The workplace can't be reinvented or altered, which
And
is not true.
Not true. I
we
mean,
could.
in Canada, there's progress. The 18 months maternity
Yes.
leave,
Yeah.
but and then working remote and flex time.
I mean, certain jobs, right?
Certain
But I
jobs.
mean, you think, okay, you become a teacher. Well, you have to be at school those days. I mean, there's family care days, and there's
Yeah.
ways you can take a personal day.
Yeah.
You don't get paid sometimes, but you can take. But a
But
teacher
a lot
has
of-
summers
a lot
and
of
all
salaried-
those.
Yeah, a lot of salaried jobs, though. If a mother takes time off to take her kid to a clinic, she doesn't get paid.
No, for sure. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think we also have to be reasonable in what we expect.
Yes. Well, and if there is a dad in the picture,
Yeah.
how about him taking an unpaid
Well,
day?
and it's just you have to give up the fact, like when I was working, I didn't have the opportunity sometimes to attend things with the kids.
Right.
But you went.
I
So
went.
they had a parent.
Yep.
And that's
And that's fine.
that is fine. Yeah. We act as if our old definitions of masculinity are outdated, even when they really hold sway over men's lives.
Yes.
So-
There are old definitions of masculinity that are certainly trapping men in
Yeah, absolutely.
2025.
We act as if women really want to be liberated from the old gender roles. In truth, it is from the unfair domestic workload, which I thought was good.
Yeah.
Um,
Work organizations can't be expected to respond to the demands of families and children, even when they are realistic. And that definitely. And other countries, particularly in Europe, they do this much better.
Yes, they do.
responding
Yeah.
to this.
And it is often still women who feel torn between family needs and personal ambitions. But I think what we have to remember as women is that you don't let anyone tell you what to do. The challenge is to follow your own heart and mind when everyone around you will have opinions and advice. You can gather perspectives, you can be open, but in the end, you have to figure out what makes sense for you and your situation, not the path of least resistance. But following your heart is not simple. It's about considering everything and operating from you, and then operating from your authentic center.
And partners or husbands need to listen and value what
Right.
the heart and mind of
I mean,
their
we
wives
made the
are.
we decided not to use daycare.
Yeah.
So we took turns staying home, and that impacted us economically,
Yeah.
like financially, but we recovered.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we're not at a place where some other people would be, like if we had just kept
Working
two
through.
careers and
Yeah.
kept going. But we considered that sacrifice important, and so
Right.
we did it. And we
Mhm.
didn't have the opportunities of working from home and some of the other things
No,
that people
didn't
do
exist.
now.
Exactly.
So what do men and women need? Both men and women. They need meaningful work, economic viability, and time to care for their children.
Time to stay connected to friends, family, and community.
And I think this line is one of my favorites. You are never stuck. You can always revise your thinking. Experience is the name we give to our mistakes. And that's a quote by Oscar Wilde. There are few resting places on the motherhood journey, but you will always find your way. And that idea of never being stuck. But you can revise your thinking only if you choose to revise your thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody can make you revise your thinking, or nobody can make you stop worrying or stop this or stop something else. It's all becomes about you.
How about your own choice? Our society encourages mothers to cultivate guilt like a little flower garden. Guilt keeps mothers narrowly focused on the question, what's wrong with me? And prevents women from becoming effective agents of personal and social change.
Yeah, I really think she does a lot of talking about guilt. And guilt is an essential human emotion that can inspire us to clarify our deepest values and keep our behavior congruent. But mother guilt is usually not productive. Most children benefit most from having a mother who respects herself and considers her own feelings. We pass our own self-regard and strength of character to our children.
Yeah.
but you
very
do
true.
come by guilt naturally, and it comes with the territory of not just motherhood, but parenthood.
Mm-hmm.
You're in good company, and it's not
I
terminal.
like that. Guilt is not parenting guilt
And
is
then
not
she
terminal.
talks about this mantra: I am responsible for my own behavior. I am not responsible for my child's behavior. And that's even hard as your children grow.
Well, you know how often I tend to slip back into self-blaming for things about our kids'
and I
choices.
think we are responsible for some of the values and things. Like,
Yeah.
I don't think but the choices that our children make day to day
Are their choices.
are their choices. And sometimes guilt can be helpful because it might inspire you to offer a genuine apology to your child. Other people can't make you feel guilty about your mothering, but they can try. And listening to and using useful feedback, but then stepping aside from negative judgments and avoiding self-blame, but using reflection and self-evaluation and change. Those are self-loving tasks.
And you know, the book, The Anxious Generation, talks all about kids. I think social media causes the perfectionism in mothers because they're all worried about their Instagram ability.
Yeah, I know several young mothers that I know that aren't on social media because of that. Yeah. Because, everything is about, it can't just be about being with your kid. It has to be about the story that you tell on social media about how wonderful it was, even when, say, you went out for the day and 10 minutes of it was great and 45 minutes of it was your kid screaming.
Yeah.
So avoid perfectionism like the plague, she says. And
it's the arch enemy of
mothers everywhere. And worry is guilt's handmaiden. Children are great teachers. They definitely teach us how to worry.
Yes, they do.
The toughest emotional challenge of motherhood is to get a grip on our anxiety or any form of emotional intensity. So emotions are important, but drowning or even swimming mindlessly about in them never helps. Take action and address real problems.
So don't ruminate.
Yeah.
Everything that is unresolved and stressful in your past and current life will prime you to worry intensely about your child. So, we can't let the past feed our future worries.
Yeah. Reactivity breeds more reactivity, and it matters if you can be a calm presence in an anxious emotional field. So don't ever kind of lose that gift of the present moment. It's like sometimes you just have to sit back and kind of enjoy their moment of, I've gone through this even with the kids in Grimsby sometimes, and they're having a complete meltdown about something ridiculous. And you kind of just have to get in the present moment, give them a hug, but not let your emotions get the best of you because you can't solve it. Because it's ridiculous.
They have to
You can't solve
self-regulate
it.
or let it peter out or whatever.
And help them move on. But they need to feel their feelings kind of through to the other side as well.
I don't think a child has successfully cried 24 hours without stopping.
They move on. Figuring out what you think is best and what you will do next when your child has something different in mind is a daily challenge.
Absolutely.
I just love that. Figuring out what you think is best and what you will do next when your child has something different in mind is a daily challenge. And that's not just true of little kids.
No. Problem solving when you are stuck in an endless struggle. So here are 5 tips of how to get out of that endless struggle.
So you pay attention to the big picture. You stay self-focused so you get a grip on intensity.
Bring down the drama.
Yeah. Aim to be created. If you're not getting through, don't do the same thing over and over again.
Craziness. Be patient with yourself. We are, after all, humans.
Seek wise counsel and solution-focused help. And you don't have to be self-sufficient.
Call a friend.
I love this line. We need other people when we have kids, sometimes immediately, and that is okay. Moms need emotional support and practical help.
Communication is about having an open heart and mind, asking good questions, not rushing in to soothe, fix, advise, criticize, instruct, admonish, etc. those shut down communication. Be fully emotional present without judgment or distraction.
Yeah, and I think that is the meltdown tip.
Yeah.
Like you're emotionally present for them. You're not trying to.
And sometimes you just pick them up, put them in the car seat, and go.
Yes, sometimes you do, because that's just how it is.
Or you say, you have 3 minutes. Go.
Yeah, go.
Bye.
All kids need a little inattention and benign neglect.
I love that sentence.
I think that's great. Kids benefit from learning that their mothers are separate others who have many things to attend to, including their own selves. They do not need your perfect attention all the time.
Yep.
And I think that is a huge lesson for modern moms,
Mm-hmm.
because they often are working. So then when they get home, they just have to be 100% with their kid. And that's not true.
No.
They're fine.
No. And maybe some of it is the adult mom missing the time.
Yes, of course. And that's a whole thing.
But we can't get back that time and feed our
No,
families.
no.
It's just
Families are not democracies. You exercise your parental authority without implying that your child is wrong or to blame, or that they should see things your way.
so gentle parenting doesn't necessarily work because you're not exercising any authority in that case.
No.
But you can still be authoritative and not make your child feel crushed.
No, and if you don't establish good communication with your kids before they leave home, you can forget about it once they're gone. And I guess we did okay in that
Yep.
area.
We always hear from
So
our kids.
try to create a calm emotional climate in which difficult information can be shared and your children can feel safe enough to ask questions and share a range of honest emotions as they arrive. Our kids are the major benefactors of the work we do on ourselves. Extreme responses in either direction are not helpful. And I think that's a hard one now for kids, because there's so many big things that kids need to, like, all of a sudden they're trans or they're fluid or they're this or they're that. Like, I think there's just so much more now than what we even dealt with at our
Exactly.
polarized notions of masculinity and femininity are a problem. Follow your heart and give your children all the love and closeness they need, especially during difficult times. A mother cannot love her son too much. Society exaggerates and distorts sex differences,
Mhm.
and these serve to keep individuals and whole groups of people in their
In their
places, which I think that's a pretty brilliant.
Mhm. There needs to be a balance so that our children value both nurturing and earning. And our children, especially sons, won't grow up having to prove their masculinity over and over to other men through status, dominance, and financial success.
So you need to keep a wide lens on your perceptions with your children and be objective. Be balanced and objective about the family you came from. This helps us heal old angers and hurts and allows us to be more even-handed in our perception and treatment of our own children.
I think we did a lot of work on ourselves with our families of origin to the point where we didn't respond with a pendulum swing.
No, we
You know,
just,
we tried to bring it
yeah.
to a more balance.
But that's that whole idea of all the work you do on yourself pays off with your
Yeah.
kids. Children do far better with facts, even very painful ones, than they do with secrets or inexplicable tension.
And that's hard when it's things like divorce or death
Yeah,
or sickness. But
The truth is the truth.
Yeah.
And why do we expect so much from mothers and judge them so harshly? Anatomy is Destiny theory states that since nature equipped you to give birth, nature would guide you in your job of rearing children.
that's a myth.
These are the myths. Here are the myths.
Yes.
Motherhood is instinctual.
No, it can be learned.
Having a child fulfills a woman in ways no other experience can.
My mom would have said no.
No. The mother is the best child care provider and should have the primary responsibility for the child's health and well-being.
A lot of men in my men's groups are, particularly in the U.S., are struggling very hard with their legal system, which defaults to women being the provider
Right.
when there's a divorce. And yet the research is showing that it's often the wrong decision.
Choice.
The courts are making
Yeah.
mistakes.
So, maternal instinct is a fantasy. How the good mother thinks, feels, and conducts herself may have less to do with nature than with the economic, political, and social climate of the day.
Yeah.
Raising children for both men and women is neither intrinsically wonderful or intrinsically terrible. It's almost always both,
Yes.
which is very interesting. There's also advice in the book about stepchildren and empty nesters,
Nice.
which is worth looking at if
yeah.
you're.
If that's the stage of life that
Yeah.
you're at. Yeah.
And kids teach these profound spiritual lessons. Pain and suffering are as much a part of life as happiness and joy.
Change and impermanence are all we can count on, for sure.
We don't run the show.
And we need to surrender to these difficult truths in order to find joy.
So, but I mean, these not only kids teach these lessons. I mean, life kind of
Yes,
teaches these
but,
profound lessons. But
I mean,
yeah, so that
focus.
is kind of the overview of
Of
her book.
The Dance of Motherhood.
I think that you should read it, even if you just have a young mother in your life that you know of.
Mhm.
But it's really worth reading.
And it changed your perspective too, as far as having adult children.
Oh, for sure. And it really does help. Like, we touched on the worry and the guilt and the anxiety, but she goes into a lot more detail, so it's
Mhm.
worth reading.
That's really good.
So on May 30th, we're going to just talk about what I feel
'Cause
are the 10 basic lessons of
I
motherhood.
don't dare say.
So
what the
that's
10
what
best-
we're going to do on the 30th.
I will be your foil and respond.
Okay, that's perfect. All right, well, thanks for joining us. Little bit after Mother's Day, but it's never too early or too late to focus on supporting mothers. So
So if you've lost your mother, spend some minutes recalling and being grateful for the whatever aspect you can think of. Even if it's just that she gave you life, but I'm sure there's other things. And if your mother's around, then don't make it
That's-
more than just one time a year.
No,
to show.
but also look for the stories. Look for the deeper understanding of what it was like for the older people
Yes.
in your life
Mhm.
when they were mothers. I think those stories are really important.
And another fun challenge is just Google Mother's Day in countries around the world, and you can probably find lots of other Mother's Day occasions to surprise your mom with something.
Yeah, for sure. So, but the most, I think, important part of the whole thing is the idea that when we are vulnerable and tell each other authentic stories about our lives, we can really support each other. And that it's important for you to find those people in your life who you can trust with those stories. So, thanks for joining us. No Room for Phonies. And we'll be back on May 30th with, what did I say? The 10 basic lessons of motherhood.
Good night.